Who are the proper early round targets in the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament? Who are the rookies you want to make sure you get in your roster, and also make sure that they don't have anything to do with your big gorilla tournament team so far? And how in the heck do you win the FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge on just 4 teams for $500,000? That and more tonight on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. We've got a great show for you. We're going to be joined by the $500,000 winner who not only took first place, but third place as well in the FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge. Captain Insano, a.k.a. Mr. Rhino, is just 15 minutes away. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than me, the lesser.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you so much, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics hanging out on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. My name is Eric Balkman. You can follow me on the X at Eric Balkman. That's ERICBALKMAN. You know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, and of course the FFPC at myffpc.com. Wow, what a show we have for you tonight. My co-host, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott, is coming up just in a little bit. Coming up on tonight's show, Ferrell and I are going to discuss the prospect of drafting Travis Kelce in your FFPC Never Too Early and Big Gorilla drafts. We're going to talk about an interesting quote from Ken Dorsey, who is now working for the Cowboys, on how the running game is going to portend to fantasy goodness and NFL success for the Cowboys this season. And then we're going to be joined by Captain Insano, Mr. Rhino, the guy who won not only first place, but took third place as well in the 2024-2025 World Famous FFPC Playoff Challenge, and how he is spending that $500,000 plus that he won in the FFPC this year as well. That is all coming up on tonight's show. If you want to connect with us on X, we are at hsffhour. I am at Eric Balkman. That's ERICBALKMAN. And of course, you can connect with the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com, a contest that I've already drafted in multiple times this year, and I would encourage you to do the same. highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com is the email address if you want to send us an email as well. We'll try to get to all those emails, all those Facebook posts and X posts, everything coming up in the fantasy feedback segment later on tonight. I want to shout out our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and of course our producer and mutual friend Rob. If you are looking for some action to play in the FFPC or just fantasy football in general right now, let me remind you that the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball tournaments are going on right now. The Never Too Early Best Ball tournament features a $125 entry fee and a $40,000 grand prize. The Superflex edition of that, $35 entry fee and a $10,000 grand prize. These tournaments are going to go all the way up to April 24th, which is the start of the NFL draft, and then they will cut off for the remainder of the season. So they're going on right now, and they will stop on April 24th. Drafts are available right now at 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 hours, and 6-hour clocks. So whatever you want, however you want to draft, be it via fast drafts, via slow drafts, we have it for you at myffpc.com. You can also pick up a Dynasty Orphan Team or 3 while you're there at myffpc.com today. The entry fees for those leagues range from $77 up to $5,000. However, many of those teams have already been discounted, some as low as $1. So you can basically get these teams for free for the first year. If you are worried about playing in an FFPC Dynasty League, wondering if the league is going to fold, we've had 1,800 plus leagues, almost 1,900 leagues in the last 15 years, and 0.00 of them have ever folded. So you don't have to worry about that at all. If you sign up for an FFPC Dynasty Draft. You are locked and loaded, and you don't have to worry about your league folding. Again, that's myffpc.com. And of course, the other thing that you need to do while you're there is joining the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, a $1 million grand prize, $350 entry fee, a 3 for $1,000 pack available right now, myffpc.com. This is the old Fantasy Pros Football Guys tournament. It is the Big Gorilla this year. Drafts are running right now, be it slow, be it live. You can, in fact, I think we have a draft going on tonight that you can sign up for, $350 to enter. The early Rampage tournament is going on right now as well. If you are one of the first teams in the first 200 leagues prior to June 14th, you'll be entered in that early Rampage tournament. So not only will you be competing for $1 million grand prize, you'll be competing for a $10,000 grand prize in the early Rampage tournament. The 7 Bananas promo is live as well. If you get the 7 pick in consecutive drafts every time you do it, 2 times in a row, 3 times in a row, 4 times in a row, 5 times in a row, you're going to get something from us, be it a best ball tournament entry, be it a Big Gorilla entry, a main event entry, a high society $10,000 entry, or if you get the 7 pick 5 times in a row, we're going to give you an all expense paid Jungle Safari or $50,000, whatever you prefer. Sign up now, myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live here on this channel, which we are so tonight. In addition to the FFPC, I highly recommend the KFFSC. KFFSC.com is where to sign up for all the leagues going on there. I've drafted a couple leagues already this year. I feel all right about my teams. We'll see how they turn out this year, but I love drafting early. You should too. Here's another guy who loves drafting early. It is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, welcome in tonight. So good to have you, my friend.
Good evening, my Wisconsin buddy. You know, and I think, how do you do all that without a teleprompter? How do you keep all that under those coiffed hair follicles and that fantastic beard that you're sporting tonight? How do you do it, Balkman?
Years of practice, number one, and number two, I don't think I'm all that good at it yet.
I think you're damn good at it.
Thank you.
For those of us who are lagging somewhat, how long do we have to renew our remaining dynasty teams?
That's a great point. We sent out a few emails with dynasty players that have told you right now that you need to renew. I do know that the time is coming up. I want to say it's less than a week that you have to renew those teams. So make sure you do it right now. myffpc.com. Dave Gerzak, our dynasty commissioner, co-founder of the FFPC, has sent out a few emails. So if you have not yet paid and re-upped, now is the time to do it, because the last thing we want to do is take these dynasty teams and put them out to the masses and let somebody else buy them. We know that you have worked very hard on building these teams, and we want you to keep them, but you do need to re-up on those dynasty teams ASAP.
And I'm not going to orphan any of my teams. I've got to get in there and pay for the balance of them. $77 teams. You know, asking someone to pay $1 for them would be really overpricing the product at this time. So, you know, I just don't want to expose the fact that these teams used to belong to me. So I want to keep my orphans and go from there.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I have 2 years ago, because I can't play in the FFPC for Dynasty. I have a ton of KFFSC Dynasty teams, which I love. One of them I cashed as a champion this year. Another one, Jahmyr Gibbs, cost me a title, but I finished second in that, so I'm super pumped about that team as well. But I look at one of my private Dynasty leagues that are the rules are very, very similar to the FFPC, and I took it over kind of under protest a couple of years ago, Ferrell. And I was like, yeah, this team
was foisted upon you.
Yeah, kind of foisted upon me. About 4 or 5 years is what I thought. Like, I'll be able to compete in 4 or 5 years. And I won the league this past year after just 2 years. And I think the thing to understand about dynasty leagues, be it in the FFPC, KFFSC, private leagues, like, you could flip these teams pretty quick, and it doesn't require a ton of work, because I know I didn't put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, it's because you're not a dummy. You didn't give away Cooper Kupp. You know, I mean, like the Rams. You know,
well, they haven't given them away yet. and we'll see what happens on that.
I think that's a very intriguing story.
We can. Well, do you want to touch on it? Let's lead that. Let's lead things off with that tonight.
Okay.
Is the news that we got last week is that Cooper Kupp is probably not going to be back with the Rams. The Rams, according to Kupp, have let him know that they are going to be seeking out a trade so he can, peddle his wares elsewhere, and it will be Stafford, we think, not official. And Puka Nacua in Los Angeles, and Cooper Kupp will be elsewhere. If you have Kupp, Ferrell, or maybe even more importantly, if you don't have Kupp, what are you doing with him in Dynasty Leagues right now, knowing that he probably won't be back with Stafford and the Rams next year? He could be technically in a better spot, dare I say, for fantasy football purposes. What are you doing with Kupp?
Well, you're going to try to acquire him any way you can. I wish we had our wonderful Dynasty playing guest from Appleton who was with us recently. He could
Jeff
tell us.
Deasing. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff would tell us what to do about Kupp, and I think he would tell us, if he's listening tonight, maybe he can join in the chat room. I think he would tell us to acquire Kupp wherever we can, that people want to move him. Next week, Balky, I'm headed to Indianapolis, the one place colder than Louisville right now. I'm headed to Indianapolis for the Combine, and it was just 7 short years ago that Kupp, a late entry into the Combine, began to make a name for himself. And you mentioned Nacua. Nacua said exactly what needed to be said. He said playing with Kupp is a real blessing. And so as Kupp moves on to his next football home, I think not only does he have a successful year, maybe he becomes the Saquon Barkley of the wide receiver corps and says, you're going to rue the day that you ever parted ways with me. But he will be a real blessing to the quarterback, the other receivers, his entire landing spot could be exponentially significant for fantasy football players that we would like to draft from his landing spot. So that's my perspective on that.
He's wide receiver 42 at the moment. He is going at the 807 in the FFPC Big Gorilla, according to the data we find on Fantasy Mojo, fantasymojo.com, at Fantasy Mojo on the X. And
you gotta love him. You gotta love our monitor.
You love him. I mean, if you are playing in the FFPC, you should love him too. I highly recommend it.
Even if you don't want to play, you should have the it will make you want to play. And the Gorilla players need it, and they need it now. They need it more than, because they might figure it out by August. So you need to buy the service now.
I just think it puts you ahead of the curve.
You're pronouncing some words a little unusually tonight.
Oh, what am I? The Gorilla? You don't like Gorilla?
Rampage. Well, first of all, Rampage. Do Rampage for me.
Okay. All right. So before I say it, Alex Kaganovsky, the co-founder of the FFPC, and I did a video of which you can find on the FFPC YouTube channel right now about the early Rampage promo that we have going on.
Rampage, yeah.
Rampage. And then Alex said, Balky, is it Rampage or is it Rampage? And I said, well, when I use it as a verb, I say rampage. I rampage through the competition. But if I use it as a noun, join the early Rampage, I say rampage. But now you are the second person to call me out on this, which makes me wonder, is this my Midwestern accent showing? Like,
I do believe
it always rampage no matter what.
I don't believe that Rampage is selling anywhere outside of the city limits of Appleton. However, Balky, if you say it, it gives me reason to consider making it a permanent word in my lexicon. Now, this thing about the gorilla, how do you spell gorilla?
G-O-R.
There you stop right there. G-O.
Yeah.
See, you're going to confuse the listeners, as if you don't say gorilla, they're going to be confused when they go there. They're going to be looking for G-A as a G-O. I think gorilla. If you practice it, you can say it.
All right. Here's the thing. Now you bring this up. This is an interesting thing.
Yes.
Ever since I've done national stuff like this with the FFPC hsffhour, I have gone out of my way, Ferrell, to disguise my Midwestern accent.
No, you shouldn't. That's what makes you famous and beloved.
Now, here's the thing. I have heard this before, that the Midwesterners, Northern Canadians, Minnesotans, Wisconsins, Michigandians, Indianans, Illinois, whatever, that we will go hard on pronunciations. And it is the way the English language was meant to be spoken. However,
I agree.
I will go out of my way to embrace a West Coast pronunciation of my O's, my hard O's, right? So I should say, if I was in Appleton, Wisconsin, if I'm selling you on the FFPC Big Gorilla, I will say, hey, you guys, you gotta join the Big Gorilla.
Gorilla, that's what you gotta join.
And
that's exactly what you gotta do.
And it's in my mind, and it has been for a decade plus. I'm like, no, you don't got to join the Big Gorilla. Join the Big Gorilla, and I will make my hard O's as soft as I can. So that's on me. You are saying I should embrace my Midwest.
You should embrace the Gorilla, and it's very important because, like in the chat room right now, we have Christian and Hicks. Great to see those guys, both Kentuckians. We have Bill Hollywood, who's an honorary Kentuckian. I mean, we want to make sure that they understand what you're talking about because. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out there.
Okay, well,
pronunciation is very important tonight.
And if you have any further advice on my pronunciation of any words in the YouTube chat, feel free to share them there. We have to get
put a little beard cream in there too. Right. You're looking good. You've got a lot of, you know what? It is a fantasy football show. Maybe we should get back to that.
Yes, we will. And who better to talk to than the guy who just cashed not only first place in the World Famous FFPC Challenge, but third place as well. This is a guy who took fourth place a couple years ago as well. He has done nothing but good things in the playoff challenge, and he is celebrating a $500,000 grand prize this year. I want to welcome him in right now. Yeah, the man, the myth, the legend. You may know him as the Rhinoceros, a.k.a. Mr. Rhino. We know him as Captain Insano. We want to welcome him in tonight. Captain Insano, the $500,000 champion of the World Famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. Good evening. Welcome to the show. How are you doing this evening? I'm
doing very well, guys. Thank you for having me on your show.
Excited to have you for sure. This is going to be a fun time. And I apologize for the Midwestern accent conversation dominating and leading into your time tonight, but that's okay because we have plenty of fantasy football stuff to discuss with you. Now, share what you will. I don't know how private you want to be about this, and I don't want to make a big deal out of it. But can you let us know when you're not being so successful in winning the FFPC Playoff Challenge, Captain Insano? What are you doing for a living?
Well, I work in the packaging industry, so pretty much I kill trees for a living, and kind of like doing that. But the best part about it is we do a lot of manufacturing here stateside, and that makes me feel very good, keeping people employed in this great country.
And you are I'm assuming, a Billy Madison fan, an Adam Sandler fan, Captain Insano?
Oh my gosh, yeah. My other team names were Finkel is Einhorn and Einhorn is Finkel. So, yeah, I love movies. I love movies about football. I love to laugh. And so that's definitely down my Gen X pattern right there for sure.
So Captain Insano, we love your success.
We do. We absolutely do. Now, before Ferrell asks you the next question about watching the Super Bowl this year with everything on the line, give me your top 3 football movies of all time.
It's easy, Balky.
No, it's not.
Don't mess this up. Insano, do not mess this up. You've got a lot riding. Now, this is the toughest question you've asked all year, and we're right. We're only in February, but I mean, you're not going to top this.
Captain,
this is hard.
Captain,
this is really hard.
Well, what is it? Because quite frankly, I couldn't narrow it down to 3 right now.
I don't think I could do that. But I could tell you my top 3 boxing movies. I could do that.
Sure. Go ahead.
There's one about a Providence, Rhode Island boxer. Bleed for This. Unbelievable movie. Everybody should watch that movie. Obviously, Cinderella Man is number 2. And then, you can pick your Rocky movie there. But there you go.
Bleed for This, I'm not familiar with. This is
oh my gosh, it is fantastic.
Okay, Aaron Eckhart, Katie Segal, whatever you want to call it, from Married with Children and Sons of Anarchy fame. Ciaran Hinds and Ted Levine. Ted Levine was in this movie too. My goodness, I got to look this up. This is based on Ferrell. Are you familiar with the Vinny Pazaniza? Am I pronouncing this right?
I got to tell you, I'm not.
Okay, I'm not familiar with this as well. Miles Teller is the head guy in this. And
we've been waiting for somebody to beat Teller up for a long time.
Right.
So that's good that he's in this.
This is wild. But this is your number one movie, Cap?
Oh, it's based on a true story. You can't beat truth. I mean, it's fantastic.
Okay. Ferrell, you and I, oftentimes after we get off the air, we will share movies that each other have to watch. This is obviously something on our list right now. This movie is 8 years old, it looks like. So I will check it out for sure.
We will redirect Captain Insano to the classic Humphrey Bogart, Anthony Quinn, Requiem for a Heavyweight. And while this is fiction, it is a compilation of all the boxing industry up into that point, which I think was just post-war. But if you like boxing movies, that's where you need to go.
I'll tell you another one just real quick, Ferrell, before you ask this next question. There was a movie that came out, and I think it's totally fictional. In fact, I'm 100% it's fictional. And I can't remember everybody who was in it, but it was Wesley Snipes. Peter Falk was in it as well. This is about, and I want to say Ving Rhames.
It's Weekend at Bernie's.
And it's not Weekend at Bernie's. No, Jonathan Silverman was on it. This was a movie about where the heavyweight champion of the world goes to prison. And there's a prison match based on like the champion of the prison going against the heavyweight champion of the world. Peter Falk is like this gangster who orchestrates the whole thing, and he puts the fight together. And it gets these. I mean, like they have like who is the guy? Lampley comes in to commentate this movie. The fight within the movie. It's really, really good. I think it's Undisputed or Undefeated or something like that. That was another great boxing movie too, and obviously Raging Bull is another good one. Okay, back to fantasy football. Ferrell, go.
Well, yeah, I do want to get around Captain Insano to talk about a little fantasy football with you tonight, because you have had success, repetitive success in these postseason challenge contests, playoff challenges, I believe what we call them at the FFPC. And congratulations on that. I have never had success. Although I flirted with 20th place for a moment this year. And I think everybody probably does that. Tell us about your emotions as you're going through this, because, with the success you've had, you kind of know that you're going to win, or you kind of know that you're going to be at the top. So talk to us about your Super Bowl Sunday, and then I'll have some other questions later in the show about how you might share with me something that can improve my woeful status as a participant in this.
Well, yeah. So probably the worst part of the Super Bowl was the 2 weeks before the championship games and the Super Bowl, because, at that point I was sitting at 11th going into the Super Bowl, and I was the top Xavier Worthy owner. So everybody ahead of me had Kelsey, and the gentleman right behind me at 12th was a perfectly named team, by the way, Factory of Sadness, which it would definitely have been so sad if Pat Mahomes, who was sitting at 12th, would have been able to surpass me. So, having a quarterback at 12 and you're sitting at 11th, and then having a bunch of Kelseys in front of you, you still had a chance. And it really came down to me. It's like, well, at that point, which chief is going to do best, because everybody had Saquon at that point. I mean, Saquon had tore it up until the Super Bowl. So there wasn't another outside Saquon owner in the top 100, which was strange, because you talk about a sweat. I didn't actually start sweating this game until the third quarter, when Devontae Smith caught that pass from Jalen Hurts. And a guy that was outside the top 100 leaped all the way to first place with Jalen Hurts as his eagle. So that was pretty wild. And I wasn't ready to see that. So outside of me, I just, I was kind of, floating between, the top 10, 13th, 16th, or something like that throughout the entire first half and into the third quarter.
Because you had a team that finished at third, were those two teams all bouncing around that top 15?
Well, I really wasn't paying much. I knew if Xavier Worthy went off in the Super Bowl, I would finish first and third based on the standings. Okay. There was Babadukes, I think that's how his name was, that was going to finish ahead of me. And there wasn't a whole lot of variance between my winning team and his, who came in second. And I'll tell you that, I didn't have Jaden Daniels as my quarterback until the next day after putting down lineups. I woke up the next morning and I slept on it. And I kid you not, I had a voice tell me, go with the rookie. And that was the difference between first and second right there. Boom. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of calm through the whole game up until the point where, I got the touchdown with Xavier. And from that point on, it was like, okay, is Kelsey going to do something, or is somebody else going to do something? I mean, am I going to hold on to this, basically? So that was kind of interesting.
So then, I mean, what was it just like, because I know it was a blowout, from a football perspective, but I mean, as far as like fantasy football, as far as this playoff challenge goes, you kind of had to be white knuckling it. I mean, all the way up to the end, just because you didn't know what these two teams were capable of, right?
Actually, no, I was pretty calm through the whole thing up until getting that touchdown. When that touchdown was confirmed, I was holding my breath. I mean, he had to come back to that pass. It was a little underthrown. He got his hands underneath it. And, until you saw the replay, you really weren't sure if it was a catch or not with all these rules they have these days. So, and then the other thing was he's still in the end zone and so on and so forth. It was a touchdown. Everything was cool. At that point, I realized that, wow, this is real. This definitely could happen. At that point, I started white knuckling. But I tell you what, I mean, I just feel God's hands through this whole process. And, I'm just telling you, like, when I say he is worthy, I'm not talking about Jesus. Okay. I mean, I'm talking about Jesus. I'm not talking about Xavier is what I meant to say, but yeah, I mean, even hearing that voice the next morning, I misspoke there. I apologize. But yeah, even in my church service, the day of that, I mean, I swear, the guest pastor looked at me and said, he is worthy. Like, oh my gosh, this is probably going to happen. I seriously, through the whole thing, I had a calmness about it. And then when it started actually materializing, I'm just thinking, I was just praising the Lord. It was amazing.
You can never get heavenly insight from a Catholic priest like that. It really, I go to mass and that never happens. It's fantastic. Balky, follow up about you. I think that a lot of people play in the leagues. It's very tempting, especially at the FFPC's generous prize points, to play multiple teams. But you've got a question about how many teams.
Well, and that's the thing, Cap, is like, I've seen people enter this contest. Not that I think that there's a high winning percentage. I think there's a decent win percentage.
Well, I can attest to that.
Right. About people who are investing a lot into this contest. I
wouldn't know what that is.
Or cashing big. But I look at this and I'll bring up this post on X from our friend Darren Armani, Fantasy Mojo, fantasymojo.com. And when I announced earlier, or when the show announced earlier today that you're going to be our guest tonight, Darren Armani said, definitely have to catch this one to hear the playoff challenge winner and what their story is. Entered just 4 teams and cashed on all 4 of them. First place,
it's just ridiculous.
3rd place, 82nd place, and 186th place. Total winnings, $538,000 on an $800 investment. Quote from Darren Armani, this seems good. Yeah, it does seem good because it is good. And that's the thing that I want to ask you about here, Cap. You didn't go crazy with all your entries. How do you cover your bases and try to, I should say all your bases, but how do you cover the most bases as possible on just 4 teams in this tournament?
Well, what's unique about this contest is you pick a player and then you can't pick another player on that team. You vanquish the opportunity for another player on that team. So it really becomes more like a puzzle to me. And, so for example, let's just say, I faded Jared, or the Bills quarterback, Allen. I was going to go Jared Allen, Vikings there.
That would have been a smart fade. Don't play Jared Allen in this contest. It's not going to work.
Exactly. But Josh Allen, the other Allen. So I faded Josh Allen, And if you're going to fade Josh Allen, you're obviously going to block into James Cook, period. End of story. That's it. So if your strategy is to not play Allen, then you're locked into Cook. And
well, hold up right there then. Because Mike, the question that I want to ask is, it becomes very obvious early on who you're going to. There's some obvious guys. Did all your teams have Barkley?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, all your teams have Barkley. So that's an easy slam dunk. And all your Chief teams prior to your tip from who I believe you said was the guest minister. How many different, did all of them have Worthy?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so they all have Worthy. So what is the toughest decision that you make then? Because I think a lot of people have Barkley and a lot of people had Worthy. But what's the toughest decision you're making that makes all these teams work? 4 of them in the money. What was the money decision you made? What was the one that you had to really spend a lot of time with and stare at the screen until selecting that player?
4 of them in the money and 2 of them in the top 3 as well.
Crazy, just crazy.
Well, yeah. So, the tough question for me was which Buccaneer to play.
Yeah.
Which I faded Mike Evans, and honestly, I had him written down initially, and here, guys, I'm going to be honest. I didn't play any fantasy football this year. This is the first year I took a hiatus from fantasy.
I wouldn't have told that. Unless you're asked that question, don't give that up.
I didn't know. I honestly didn't know who Jaden Daniels was. I didn't know who Xavier Worthy was. I didn't know who Bucky Irving was. I didn't know who these guys were until after the season. Now, I know you're going to say, I think going into a football season is a lot harder because you have teams that are drafting new players. You have free agency. There's no real exact same thing as it happened last year. Now with the postseason contest, you have a whole body of work going into the postseason, and you have all these stats, you have things to look at. You can learn rather quickly how things possibly could play out. So anyways, I was back to the Buccaneer thing, and the toughest decision I made was to fade Mike Evans because he was up against Lattimore, and I really thought that was going to make a difference, and I really thought they were going to go with the rookie McMillan, who was coming on towards the end of the season, and that didn't pan out. But if it had panned out, that would have been massive, and that would have put me way ahead of the other teams that had, let's say, Bucky Irving or Mike Evans, because the ownership would have paid out. It would have been a really good move. So I kind of cheated on the Buccaneers. I played, I did my 4 lineups. I did 2 with Daniels and Hawkinson as my tight end. And then I did 2 lineups with Darnold and Ertz as my tight end. So with that, I played McMillan, and then I also played Bucky Irving and faded Mike Evans, which turned out to be a bad idea. But anyways.
Yeah, well,
yeah, you made a lot of bad ideas on your way to this. That's really good. Yeah, I believe that. If this was some sort of, if we were trying to get you passed for a cabinet position in fantasy football, we would have to continue the grilling. But I will let Balky go on to another question.
Fantasy football cabinet positions. Now we're on to something.
Because when you let that out that you didn't play fantasy football, I mean, it's good that we can see Sandler here because everybody hang on, I got to call this guy back. It's good that we can see Sandler here because lots of people would like to take a shot at him. But, if you showed up at Planet Hollywood and announced that you were a $500,000 winner on $800 buy-in and you didn't play fantasy football this year, somebody's going to try to throw a cheap shot at you. So I'm glad, that nobody can see your face. I'd be protecting you because, you're my wingman. Because you can make me a contender.
Yeah. I think that one of the things, Cap, that people want to know, especially when it comes to this contest, which I know you love, when you sit down and you know all the teams, you know all the players that are going to be in the playoffs, you know the schedule, you know the bracket, what's the first thing you do when you sit down to build a lineup? Are you filling out your playoff bracket? Are you looking at players? Like, I think that one of the things that seems most obvious, but maybe sometimes people don't focus on, what's the first thing you need to do when you're building a playoff championship lineup like this that wins $500,000?
Well, that's a good question. I used to do the bracket thing, and I think, I've been playing this since 2014. And back in the beginning of doing this contest, obviously we had the NFL format where you had in both conferences 2 bye teams, and you had fewer teams. I don't know how they added an extra team to each bracket or something like that. Anyways, the bracket system, I think back then was a little bit easier to predict. I think adding the extra team and only having 1 bye team changed everything. So I kind of had to relearn, since I did win a 4th place back in 2018, and that was in the old format. So really it took a while to get accustomed to this new format. And this year, for better or worse, I mean, you got to kind of pay attention to what you do well at. You learn, you write stuff down, and I would employ anybody who does any kind of contest or anything in life is to basically write down your victories. And if you had some really bad choices, write those down too, and then you come back to them, you learn from them. This year I just went ahead and wrote down the chalkiest lineup as I possibly could, and then I started from there. So I wrote down Allen, Barkley, Henry, Puka, Mike Evans, Kelsey, Boswell, Broncos, Jahmyr Gibbs, Justin Jefferson, Jacobs, and I didn't know who Ladd McConkey is, but he deserved to be on this list. So after learning who Ladd McConkey is, I was like, he's my man. So
this is fantastic. I'm telling you, Cap, this is some of the best stuff you will have. But but kidding aside, we have heard so many people come on this show, people who have won this contest, people who have done very well in this contest, that will say you got to sit down and build your bracket first. But for you, you're not only not building the bracket, you're just building the chalk lineup and then adjusting after that, which I think is a great way to go about it, and certainly a great way that paid off for you for $500,000. And the best part about this is, and people probably not watching the show will love, you don't even know the players.
You shouldn't have repeated that, Balky. We got past that. You got one. You got a line. Okay. All right. Now look, since we are writing everything down, I would like it officially entered into the record that in the old format I struggled as well. Yeah. So okay, now, you've told us. You've told us some mistakes that you made. Let's try to look at this, the things that you got wrong. Let's kind of look at it and see what, because you look at everyone else's lineup too. And perhaps you have some insight, Captain Insano, to what others are doing wrong. And perhaps we could all benefit from learning. We've learned to pick up, you can win with chalk. We've learned that. But what are we all doing that we don't win at this? What's the problem? What's going on?
Well, I think the number one problem is you playing not to win. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're playing not to lose. You're basically, you don't want to lose. You're being too conservative.
You got to take risks. You got to go.
You're not taking risks. You're not stepping out a little bit. The thing is about this contest, it's not like you're drafting this team. It's not a fantasy football season. It's the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And it's you can't just pick the best players per team. And it's like, oh wow, this is looking like a really awesome fantasy football team. But there's so much more to this in the playoffs that you can't do it that way. And
did you project that perhaps Kansas City would trail and have to use Worthy? Did you project that Kelsey in the running game was beat up and it's a little bit on the older side with Hunt? Did you project that Worthy would deliver? Was that one of the risk? I mean, what were some of the risks besides Worthy that you took? Your risk.
Okay,
I think. Well, I mean, just real quick, Irving had to be one, right? I mean, that was a risk.
That's a risk, but we said that was not a good risk. We said that was not a good decision, right?
Okay, all right.
Well, I can look back on my decisions and I could justify them. I mean, one of the other bad decisions that you can make is just picking a player for just no real reason. Like,
Right.
I'm a Vikings fan. I grew up in Minnesota, so I'm all about your Midwest accent. So it's all good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Cap. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I can hang on to an O sound longer than anybody. You can ask my wife. So speaking of which, I'm gonna pick on Aaron Jones, and some people actually put Aaron Jones as their Viking in their lineup. Do y'all know how many touchdowns the Vikings scored on the ground this past season?
Very few.
Five touchdowns. I mean, put that in perspective. Saquon Barkley had 5 touchdowns in 2, playoff games this playoff season.
Good quarter. It's good first half.
Yeah. If he doesn't get 5 touchdowns in the first half, what's wrong with Barkley?
So picking Aaron Jones as your Viking is just, you're really being different, but you're being bad different. That's just dumb different.
Oh, I like that expression, Balky. Bad different.
Bad different or dumb different? Both of them are great. Both of them are great.
Well, he's, Insano is too good a guy to insult people.
Okay, so we'll go with bad. We'll go with bad different. Bad different is fine. Yeah. Anyway, keep going. I'm sorry.
Oh no. I just just in my notes here, I was like, just don't be dumb. I mean, think about what you're doing. You should have a good reason behind your decisions. So, the other thing is that I think a lot of the times that we put too much emphasis on the quarterback. And all my cashing lineups that I've had, I'll tell you this story. Part of the reason I went with the rookie this year is because I went with the rookie back when I won in Lamar Jackson in 2018. He was facing the Chargers and he tore him up the first time. And then the Chargers sacked him 7 times and beat him up in the first half. They didn't have any points. I think they may have kicked a field goal in the third quarter. I stopped watching that game in the third quarter and walked away thinking my playoff challenge was over. And I didn't honestly watch another playoff game that entire year. Okay. And then I went just back to the website just to see where I was. I was 61st or something like that. And I lost my quarterback in the first wildcard game.
Yeah.
It does not matter as much. There's too much emphasis put on the quarterback. And I think a lot of people put too much emphasis on like the bonus points for tight ends. And then now the trend is like flexing wide receivers and tight ends only, or, trashing running backs. I think that's a mistake as well. So, anyways, there's a lot of little things you probably stub your toe on.
No, I think you make a good point here. And I think that just in fantasy football in general, and Ferrell knows this, and you definitely know this, Cap, is like every time we think we figured it out, the NFL will turn us on our head and say, no, that's not the way it always goes. And you can find a way to finish not only in the money, but finish in first place overall. Not even by being counterintuitive, like just or not counterintuitive, but being
he's a niche market millionaire.
No, what's the word I'm looking for here? When you're talking about going counterculture, whatever that is. Where you're going the opposite.
Zig versus Zag.
Zig versus Zag, where you think like I have to have a quarterback making it to the Super Bowl.
No, really.
I have to have a tight end that is really successful. No, it's not always the case. And you proved that this year, Cap, for sure. And I want to flash back to the early part of the interview. Was it not until that Xavier Worthy touchdown that you felt like you had a chance of winning, or going into the Super Bowl, did you already think like, hey, if things fall my way here, I could take down this $500,000?
Right. So that whole story about Lamar Jackson and then checking out where I stood back in 2018, realized I like, oh wow, I'm in 61st place. I said, well, I had let's see, the Rams wide receiver Cooks, and I had Edelman. And going into the Super Bowl, it's like, okay, who has the same guys as I do? So I went up, all the positions in front of me, and I realized that the best I could do was fourth. Okay, so clearly when I'm sitting in 11th and no Xavier Worthy owners are ahead of me, I realized right then and there I could win this thing.
Mhm.
And so after the championship weekend, I went to my wife and I explained the situation to her. I said, this could happen. This could be real. And with the whole experience and the whole process up until this point, it honestly felt like it was going to happen. I can't explain it. Again, that's a God thing. But I was cautiously optimistic at that point, very much so.
And I suspect that your wife said, well, how the hell do you think that's going to happen? You didn't even play fantasy football this year. That would be so. Okay,
You
so
don't even know who Lad McConkey is, and you're going to win this thing?
The gentleman from Kentucky has a question. Do you know who Brock Bowers is? Just want to throw that out there.
Brock Bowers?
Have you ever heard of that guy? Balky went to high school with him. It's okay. I was trying to trick you. All right. Now,
okay.
All right. So obviously, besides winning and telling your wife, that not only may I win, but I'm gonna win, and so you can, if it's possible, you could love me even more. What is your favorite part about this competition besides winning? I mean, do you watch a lot of the playoff football? Do you share this with friends? This information with friends? Is it just the thrill of picking the team and the fact that you haven't played much fantasy football? Maybe you can put more time into this because you're so focused at it. What is it that you really enjoy about it?
Well, I will say that not playing fantasy football this year eliminated a lot of biases from myself, and it allowed me to be a little bit more objective going into the playoffs. But that being said, the thing I really find enjoyable about doing this contest is just, again, I look at it as like a puzzle. And for me and what I do, I'm pretty good at puzzles, and I just love figuring things out. If I have a hunch, I like to go ahead and ride that hunch. And I think one of the first hunches I had playing this contest was back in 2014 when instead of taking either a Tony Romo, Des Bryant, DeMarco Murray, or Jason Witten, I took the pride of Baylor University and Terrence Williams. And he ended up with in 2 games having a total of 4 catches, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns. Okay. And most of that damage came against the Lions. So the kind of the thing I noticed, I did play fantasy football that year, and the truth about the Lions defense that year, and I can't remember if their number 1 cornerback was really that good or their second cornerback was that bad, but basically any second wide receiver against the Lions had a pretty good day in fantasy land when playing the Lions. So that's basically why I went ahead and selected Terrence Williams that year. So, but taking those little chances like that do pay off. I think I may have made a few $100 that year because of that one pick, but that definitely made it fun.
Balky, I think, if someone just stumbled over the show tonight and they hear that he's 61st and 83rd, perhaps it would, I'd have to first say to that person, get a life. But actually, why don't you enlighten everyone and remind everyone about how many contestants there were, where we can remember, we can recognize, everybody knows first and third is special, but can recognize how finishing in the top 100 is.
I'm looking forward to the phone call I'm going to get from either Alex or Dave, the co-founders of the FFPC, on Monday or Sunday or Saturday, whenever they listen.
Those guys aren't listening to this.
And they're going to be like, hey, Balky, you book all the guests for this show, and here's what I took away from the program Friday night. You had a guy on who won $500,000 from us, who played in he had 4 entries and he doesn't play season-long fantasy football. This is the worst way.
I'm going to take care of that right now, Balky. If you continue to explain his greatness and research
All right. Here's the thing. The playoff challenge this year, 7,500 total teams, right? Captain Insano entered 4 teams, all finished in the top 200, and 2 of them finished in the top 3. As Corey Walters points out in the FFPC YouTube chat, it's one thing to have one team finish in the top 3. Multiple teams finishing in the money. Usually when I pick multiple teams, one team does okay and the other one does nothing. But for you, Cap, 2 teams in the top 3. Kudos to you, and kudos again. Impressive stuff, my friend.
Insano, if you were listening earlier to our lead-in on the show, you would have heard Balky and I discussing the proper name for the Gorilla tournament. Yeah. And if you'll take some of those winnings and think about joining a Never Too Early and one of the Gorillas, and just spreading it out there where you can enjoy it. Not only will it be a big thing for you, and I think you'll continue with fantasy football success, but I will send you some of my bananas.
There you go. You got bananas.
I will personally send you this Kentucky banana.
That's a dole right there, Cap. That's a dole. Those are the good ones.
You got that to look forward to if you join.
Well, I might have to do it then. That's enticing. I do like bananas, but I might have to stick to what I'm good at, which may not be season-long fantasy football. We'll see.
Well, I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, like you love this contest. You've been very good at it. I'm going to skip over the emails, Ferrell. I'm just going to ask some last questions because we're up against it. But $500,000, not only $500,000, but as our good buddy Darren Armani from Fantasy Mojo pointed out, this is, the better part of $550,000 that you won this past year in this contest alone. Have you talked with your wife? Do you have any plans? What are you going to do with this cash?
Right. So basically, very fortunate to be in position to have this. And like I said, this is a blessing from my Lord and Savior. And it wouldn't be right not to share that with my church. And also my son's former kindergarten teacher has cancer right now. Ooh. And we plan on picking up some of her medical bills. So that's going to be something we plan on doing. Of course, pay off some debt, maybe some home improvement and repairs, vacations. Then after that, I'm just going to pay some taxes and invest the rest. So that's the plan.
This is hold on. I just want to clarify. Your son's former kindergarten teacher is battling cancer right now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, and well, kudos to you for helping helping that teacher out. That's fantastic. Good stuff. My wife is a teacher, and not that she's battling cancer, but everybody who is living and breathing right now has had somebody in their lives touched by cancer, and certainly you are going out of your way to doing a very noble cause here to help defer some of the costs on that. So kudos to you there, and probably going to work out good for you in the whole fantasy football karma situation going forward, I would think, in your future endeavors. I know you are no stranger to the playoff challenge, too. You've had a lot of success on this, and I want to congratulate you personally, as Ferrell will as well. Thank you so much for hopping aboard tonight. This was a lot of fun. I know we kept you a little bit longer than what we said, but the insight that you brought, not only in building these teams, I know next year when I'm sending out FFPC mailers, because I know everybody always asks, hey, what did the team look like last year? What was the winning lineup? Not only am I going to send them the winning lineup and say, hey, listen to this podcast, because Captain Insano gives you a couple of nuggets on how he builds his team to win that $500,000, and you never know, maybe you'll go back to back next year. Thank you,
Insano. Wonderful congratulations. Yes. And you have inspired me, along with other listeners, to take more risk and probably buy more teams. So I think in retrospect, Balky, this has been a wonderful thing for the business tonight. And I will see that I can envision, is there a church van up there? Do you have a little van that the church has there? I kind of picture that. Am I correct?
Well, I think every church needs a van for sure.
Good. Well, yeah, maybe what I'm thinking is that you load men from the church in the van and head to Kentucky. That would be a spiritual visit here to come and join us for some fantasy football in Kentucky. So you have you have that invitation as well.
And I would tell you that Ferrell would have either a Ladd McConkey or a Brock Bowers jersey waiting for you, Cap.
That Brock Bowers is a good player.
You wouldn't even know who they were, so it doesn't really make a difference.
Have you ever heard of Tyreek McAllister? Study up on that guy. He's a coach.
Yeah, good running back. Good running back. Cap, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. This has been an absolute pleasure. Be good, and congratulations again. We'll talk with you soon.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You bet. That is Captain Insano,
Captain
the $500,000 winner of the FFPC Playoff Challenge.
Insano.
And Insano. That's what we're doing, Captain Insano. First and third place, as well as he has cashed a bunch in this contest this year. Ferrell, I don't want to pay off. I want to pay off teases that we had at the top of the show.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Kind of rapid fire.
I'm ready
on these things. Alec Lewis from The Athletic has reported that he believes the Vikings are most likely going to let Sam Darnold test the free agent market.
Sure.
This is the former number 3 overall pick who looked awesome last year, except for the last 2 games. And now we don't know where he's going to end up. It could be Pittsburgh. It could be Las Vegas. It could be the Giants. Who knows? My question to you is, how do you draft players specifically on the Minnesota Vikings that we know are going to be there this year? Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah.
Are you bumping them down? Are you not penalizing them at all because we don't know who the quarterback is? And quite frankly, if we guess who the quarterback is, I think most people will tell you it's going to be the non-rookie but kind of rookie JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, so and those 3 players you mentioned are quarterback talent proof. If they can get a guy that can just get the ball in the general area, they'll make the catch. So I'm not going to devalue any of those players. Down here on Super Sunday drafts, Justin Jefferson was a regular first-round draft pick into the first round. So, no, I really like that idea. And the captain gave us a nice stat. They had very few rushing touchdowns this year. I'm sure they'll try to change that in this upcoming year. But the quarterback talent at the level that we're getting down to with Darnold and McCarthy and these kind of guys is somewhat interchangeable. And a new broom sweeps clean,
I was talking with Neil Dutton from RotoViz 4for4 Player Profiler last night.
He
was of the opinion that's like, look, Kevin O'Connell knows quarterbacks, and if he brings down McCarthy, one of the first things he's going to say is like, look, you got Jefferson, you got Addison, and you got Hawkinson. Feed these guys the ball, and that will keep you. Not only will it keep you with good stats, it's going to keep our offense running, and it's going to help us keep winning games. So I think
that's true facts, Balky.
Let's go down to Dallas, Ferrell. Cowboys' new offensive assistant, Ken Dorsey, stated that the Cowboys are going to, quote, be a team that's going to run the football and be able to utilize that as a strength for us. Ferrell, Dallas, 29th in yards per game last year for rushing, 30th in yards per carry. And Rico Dowdle, 1,000 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. He's a free agent. And this is a guy who came on late in the season. I wonder if the Cowboys have something up their sleeve. I wonder if the Cowboys are of the opinion like whoever is going to be the lead running back on this team is going to be huge for us. Now, I believe Dorsey was making these comments after Zach Martin. Hallelujah to him. Congratulations on a fantastic career. 7-time All-Pro. Unbelievable right guard for the Cowboys. I believe he made this announcement after Martin told the Cowboys he's retiring. My point here is, free agency, we'll see what happens. But whoever that lead guy is in Dallas right now, according to Dorsey, this is a guy you want to be in business with. And there's a lot of people out there saying it's going to be Ashton Genty at the 12th pick in the draft this year.
All those things make a lot of sense, Balky, and I think Dorsey in that situation and talking to the media, it's as if he's still applying for the job. Let's see how much they keep the ball on the ground after they're trailing in the second quarter by 2 touchdowns to the likes of Washington and Philadelphia in their own division. It's, wanting to run the ball is an attitude. And if you can instill that attitude and success, and if you have the offensive line skill to do it, the offensive linemen love to run block.
Yeah.
If you go into free agency and you say, guess what? We're going to run the ball. Well, you just may be able to sign some more offensive linemen and bring them to Dallas. So the story's still to be told. That's what they want to do. And so maybe they'll find a way to do it.
I would love to see it. And I know with Brian Schottenheimer in charge, they're going to want to run the ball more than they have in previous years.
We asked the captain, what do players, what does he see people doing wrong and what does he do wrong? And devaluing running backs, fantasy football managers, it's just, we go back to Kareem Hunt, who was called off the street, and everybody just passed on Kareem Hunt. You could get him in before he dressed for Kansas City. You could get him in waiver wire for next to nothing.
Yeah,
and he had a marvelous year. There's running backs out there in the right system, in the right circumstance. Get away from the word system. In the right circumstance, can really deliver in this league. And Dallas may be smart enough to go find one or two.
Yeah, and maybe it is two. Maybe they do the Green Bay thing from a few years ago when the Packers went with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Not in that order. They went Jamal.
I like doing the Detroit thing
with Montgomery and Gibbs. Certainly,
I've heard of those guys. I bet Insano hasn't heard either.
It's up for discussion.
Fantastic.
Speaking of Detroit, Ferrell, Jamison Williams, according to the Detroit Free Press's Dave Burkett, he has reported that Williams is not going to face any league discipline after he did not get any charges for carrying an unlicensed gun in Detroit. Now, Williams is going to come into the season as a super explosive wide receiver in the NFL. He had 1,000 yards receiving last year. I would have thought that this gun thing that was hanging over his head would have knocked him down in the FFPC. In my opinion, it hasn't. He's wide receiver 31 at the 604 right now. Not that that's a super expensive price to pay, but that's Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin, George Pickens, Robert Dunze territory right there. I don't know if I'm targeting Williams as the wide receiver 31, knowing, and it's a new offensive coordinator there. I get that. But knowing that Amon-Ra St. Brown, knowing that Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs are still there, I think that's kind of a rich price to pay for Williams as an early 6th-round pick. Are you with me on this, or are you against me?
I think you're overthinking it. If he matches your build, go ahead and get him. As far as not receiving charges for carrying an unlicensed gun, I think everybody carries an unlicensed gun in Detroit. It's just, I won't even fly through there, Balky. And the airlines, don't do it. But I love visiting. But it's no. There's more stupidity from players carrying guns. It has a bigger correlation with career-ending decisions than knee injuries do. It's just bad business. These guys got to realize we're no longer in the Old West, unless you come to Kentucky, which you carry any kind of gun you want down here.
It's one of the perks.
It's another reason everybody should come play the league.
Exactly. Or you could go to Cincinnati, Ferrell, and draft there as well, which is
no, we're not in Cincinnati anymore. We're in a fabulous jewel of this continent called Northern Kentucky.
Northern Kentucky.
We're no longer in
Northern Kentucky.
Ohio has invited us to leave, and so we're close enough to get a glimpse of the water, but we're not in Ohio.
So Northern Kentucky, that is the Norse.
Well, oddly enough, the Cincinnati airport is in Kentucky. You wonder what Kentucky politicians had on the voice for Ohio to get that done. But the Cincinnati airport is in Kentucky, and we will be at the Marriott Airport Hotel and Convention Center on August 17th, Balky. Thank you for the plug. Well, we plugged the KFFSC almost as much as Darren Armani. And, you're a fantasy football missionary tonight, Balky.
Well, you know what? It's funny. Speaking of KFFSC, I had a Google invite to myself, a Google reminder to book my flight today, or at least start looking for the flight 6 months ahead of time, because 6 months from now, I will be in the KFFSC drafting live, which I always look forward to.
For 3 days, the 22nd through the 24th.
That's right. That's exactly right. Broadcasting the show live there, drafting in the Midnight Madness, drafting at the Bourbon Turn, sunrise at the Bourbon Turn, promptly at 7 a.m. I always look forward to that. It's going to be a good time.
That sunrise division is always a great division, And Tom now is trying to become an enemy of the program there at FPI, not this program, but the enemy of the FPI program. It's a great collection of guys.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I'm a huge fan. Tom pointed out, by the way, on the show last night that he and I play each other in that big payback, that Super Sunday big payback that we drafted on Super Bowl Sunday. He and I are battling each other week 1, so we'll see what happens there. We're already looking at schedules. I got to figure out the rest of my draft.
I will have to fly the flag of neutrality in that matchup.
Yeah, I know. I totally expect you to. The last thing I want to bring up before we get out of here tonight, James Rapian, who covers the NFL for Sports Illustrated, reports that the Bengals are planning to use the franchise tag on T. Higgins.
Yes.
Higgins and his representation expects to get tagged. He is a 50 receiver, and he is not going to make it to the free agent market. The decision to tag Higgins, quote, feels different, according to Rapian, while adding the Bengals plan to sign him to a long-term deal. Again, this is according to Rapian sources. We don't know if that's going to happen. What we do know is a Jamar Chase deal is probably going to happen this offseason. And I think, Ferrell, all the arrows are pointing at Cincinnati keeping the band together. Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow. All these guys are going to be big-time contributors on this Bengals offense this year. When you look at the ADP for these Bengals players right now, I can tell you that not only is Jamar Chase going on average as the 101 player, the first overall pick taken, T. Higgins has climbed up to the 304 as wide receiver 14. Joe Burrow is sitting at quarterback 5 at the 603. Are all these guys going to pay off for a second straight season? In my opinion, it is going to require the Bengals defense to be as bad or close to as bad as they were last year. I'm not sure that happens. How do you handle, not necessarily Chase, but how do you handle Higgins in drafts right now, knowing that the early reports are saying the Bengals are going to tag him?
There's very few teams outside Tampa, I think, that's even a bad example. You'll have to correct me, Balky, but there's very, very few teams that have a 1-1 draft pick wide receiver and turn around and have one drafted that high in the third round. But this team justifies it, and I think that to all those we just talked about Northern Kentucky, those guys are great Bengals backers there, and they've got a sigh of relief. And this is what the franchise tag was built to do. There was a lot of pushback early on when the franchise tag was introduced, but now with the average of the receivers, T. Higgins is looking at a $26 million contract, and he'll push through that, and they'll continue to negotiate through the tag. And so from a fantasy perspective, I think that Higgins' situation cannot be improved by moving to another team. Usually if you take the number 2 receiver and the verified number 1 at another place, you think he's in a better situation fantasy perspective. Mm-hmm. I can, and maybe there are teams that we start thinking of, but you think about landing spots for Higgins if he was available on the market, which he's not. But if you think about it and you begin to look at it and you say, where's he going to do any better than what he does at Cincinnati? And it's so for fantasy football, I'm thrilled that these 2 great receivers will be together with this quarterback who, as we all remember, struggled through the year. And I don't know, maybe we need a fantasy football realist to come on and always talk about the Bengal players. They had problems with Burrow last year. Remember a few years ago when we were out in Las Vegas and everyone said that, well, Jamar Chase just can't catch the ball.
Yes. There was the stripes.
Yeah.
There was the stripes on the football. They were
different. It was very difficult. All this nonsense about this team, which is just as fun to play fantasy with, as well as it is to watch them as your favorite team. So I think this is a wonderful situation.
The last thing I'll leave you with tonight, Ferrell, is something you just brought up. The top duo in the NFL in fantasy football in the FFPC right now being drafted. Mm-hmm. It is Cincinnati. It's Chase at the 101 and then Higgins at the whatever I just said before, the 304. Now where you go after that, it's wild because the next tandem that's drafted is wide receiver 20 and wide receiver 21. which is Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. So they're being drafted back to back. That's the next tandem after that. So that you put a kind of an asterisk there. The next one after that, Garrett Wilson to Devontae Adams. Asterisk next to there because you don't think Devontae Adams is probably going to be a New York Jet after past year. And then after that, it's Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, wide receiver 16, wide receiver 23. So Higgins and Chase are what the kids would call the creme de la creme as far as wide receiver goes.
Hey, Balky, do you have a favorite wide receiver in free agency once you move Higgins out?
A favorite one
or an intriguing one? I'm thinking of a guy. I've got one, and I'm curious. I'm sure my guy is not your guy, and I'm going to need some help because the kid that returned the punts, is it Tipton that returned the punts for Dallas this year? Little number 5, I think it is.
Wasn't that Kevontae Turpin?
Turpin, no, not
yeah.
Turpin. Yeah. Turpin is a free agent, and if I'm going to run the ball down in Dallas, I sure as hell want to re-sign that ball player. You know,
yeah. I mean, I think for fantasy, okay, so Turpin's interesting.
Yeah,
but I think for fantasy purposes, I want to see what the Buccaneers do with Godwin. I think that they're going to try to find a way to keep him in Tampa. I don't think that it's similar to what Cincinnati's doing, right? That they're trying to keep Higgins in. I think the Buccaneers are trying to keep Godwin in. But after that, I mean, you're looking at Stephon Diggs. You're looking at Amari Cooper. These guys don't nearly have the ceilings that they used to, but they are intriguing to see where they end up in 2025. I'm kind of out on Hollywood Brown. I'm out on DeAndre Hopkins. But I would think that if you couldn't include Higgins into this, and I don't want to include Godwin because I think they're going to find a way to get it done. I think it comes down to Cooper. I think it comes down to Stephon Diggs. But even then, like, I don't even know how high the ceiling is on those guys right now.
And those are the noted names of fantasy football that in the never too earlys, and maybe I should have explained why this player interested me. You know, if Captain Insano is still with us, he would say, well, hell, Ferrell doesn't know players either. He can't remember Turpin. But I think when you're in the late double-digit rounds, the never too early best balls, and what you want then is explosive players. They can have that 1 or 2 or 3 explosive games and maybe even more. And that's, to me, is what Turpin is. And so that's one of the things that I look for in that format. So I'm watching that player closely, and I'd really hope Dallas re-signs him.
Yeah, I think what's intriguing to me is Dallas. I think not only is trying to build up the receiver position, but I think they might be looking on the outside to try to build this up, be it free agency, probably the draft, because I think they have a bunch of guys that could be the number 2 there with Turpin, with who is
Tolbert.
Jalen Tolbert is another one, and then I thought there was a third guy there that I'm forgetting. Not Cooks, not obviously not Michael Gallup. I thought there was
the kid out of SEMO in Missouri. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Okay, I'm going to look it up right now. Just so
when I first got in the football business, Balky, I thought it was real cool because the scouts, the old school scouts, they'd sit around and talk to me about, well, we like number 8, we like number 28, we like this. Yeah, and then I realized years later that they like all these numbers because they can't remember the names either.
Right, exactly.
They love all the numbers. So it's
the guy I was trying to think of was Jonathan Mingo, who they traded.
Mingo, yeah.
Carolina.
Well, go further. Can you find the depth chart and tell me who that player is?
Well, they got Ryan Flournoy. Is that the guy?
That's him, Flournoy. Yeah,
Flournoy,
who's a very good player, small college player, very good player. Hey, Balky, we're 15 minutes over. I can go all night. Bobcat is not here. I'm willing to go all night.
I am not, and I'll tell you the listeners why after the show, or the viewers after the show. But I'll tell you this in regards to Turpin. I think, and this is just my personal opinion, I have nothing to back this up on. Jerry Jones strikes me as the type of guy for the number 2 receiver to go outside the organization. And if he goes outside the organization, it means Turpin could be the odd guy out. And there could be one of these forward-thinking organizations, NFL teams, that will see, hey, this is a guy who's not only a playmaker on special teams, we can utilize him. We can carve out a role for him on offense as well. And maybe he develops under that team as a guy that could be the number 2 receiver eventually. Maybe not this year, but in 2026.
If I'm Mr. Dorsey and I want my rushing attack, this guy's doing 5 jet sweeps a game.
That's a great point too. And he would certainly be able to pull it off. No question. So I will tell you this. I was not at all intrigued with Kevonta Turpin as far as where he was going to go. To borrow a line for Leonardo DiCaprio and Django Unchained. Ferrell, you had my curiosity. Now you have my attention. In regards to Turpin. Everybody should have their attention focused at KFFSC.com. KFFSC.com, the home of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Be on the lookout there for new drafts popping up all the time. I already got 2 in the bank this year. Looking forward to many more. KFFSC on the X, KFFSC official on the X. Ferrell, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. We'll do this again a week from today.
And speaking of the bank, Balky, your trophies are being cast right now.
Oh, there you go. I love it. I love to hear it. It's all good news. We'll see you later, man. Take care. That is Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, joining me on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight, an extended version of the HSFF Hour. I want to thank Captain Insano, Ferrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you for listening and watching, streaming, downloading, what have you. We will be back next Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern time with 23-time FFPC champion Jeff Newton, a guy who has, I think, roughly a dozen Dynasty FFPC titles to his name. So we'll get into the Dynasty conversation, as next week will be our final show of the month of February for 2024, and it will be all about Dynasty after that. So Jeff Newton is going to join us for that program next week. In case you missed last night's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, I had on RotoViz, 4for4, and player profilers Neil Dutton chopping it up with me for 2 hours. So much fun to have him on. One of the things I didn't realize, I realized after the fact, I knew Neil lived in England. That was an awful late night for him, but he brought it last night. It was a lot of great stuff, a lot of good knowledge on rookies, a lot of good knowledge on how to handle some of these veterans in kind of polarizing situations, changing situations. So check that out on the Better Sports Network or the BSN or FFPC socials. That will be up there. We'll be back on that show next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern with Sean Siegel from RotoViz, the founder of the Zero RB strategy from RotoViz. So always look at, Sean's done the show a couple of times. He always brings it. So that's going to be a lot of fun. 7:00 next Thursday night. FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournaments. FFPC Big Gorilla is going on at myffpc.com, as well as a ton of FFPC Dynasty Orphans that you can pick up now and play fantasy football 365 days a year. Once again, myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on it, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks so much for hanging out on an extended version of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour for Ferrell Elliott and Captain Insano. I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the HSFF Hour on the FFPC YouTube channel. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
You know, I tease this, and I want to make a big deal out of it because it's not a big deal. But one of the things I teased towards the end of the show, I got a phone call today about 10 o'clock, a little after 10 o'clock this morning, that my 9-year-old daughter passed out at school today, just fainted. It was Grandparents' Day. She was eating a pretzel, and all of a sudden, eyes rolled back in her head, and she just keeled over, passed out. So I met her at urgent care with my wife, her mother, and, been hanging out with her most of the day today. She seems to be doing a lot better. Could have been anxiety that caused it. Could have been the temperature in the room. We don't know. But the doctor who examined her said, let's just keep monitoring this and hopefully it'll be okay. And I think it's going to be okay. The point I bring this up is not to end on a down note. This is a positive note. It could have been a lot worse, and it's not. At least it appears not to be. So I say this all the time as a guy who lost his little bro at the age of 43 just a few months ago. Hug everybody, tell them you love them, and make sure that because you never know when life is going to be cut short or whatever. You want to make sure that you are in the right frame of mind with all those people that you love. If you end up going or if they end up going, what have you. I was reminded of it today, and I think it's just good advice. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Certainly appreciate it. Have fun drafting some fantasy football teams, and let's have a chat again this coming Friday on the HSFF Hour. Be good. We'll see you.